Well, we got an update for everyone's favorite topic to close out the week, and that's the Nintendo Switch 2, or Nintendo's next-gen system, the Super Switch. I think that's a good name for it, but I also believe Nintendo might do something weird. Nintendo Switch, that's a Switch with two eyes, maybe italicized. Anyway, in this case, we have a new report that appears to not only point out the release timing for it, but also a major factor in something we've heard recently, actually as of last year, and all this seems to be lining up with Nintendo's new system. Yes, coming this year, so we're going to go over that here today. So if you guys enjoy this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new. This report does come out of Bloomberg, Takashi Mochizuki, which I will say is a source that Nintendo at least pays attention to enough and times will feel the need to refute information or stories that they publish. They've done it before in the past, but as of 24 to 48 hours or so after this report was posted, they have not put out any kind of response to this, and I feel like it's because this is lining up to be correct. Now, again, this is from Takashi Mochizuki, doubling down on what we heard last year with the screen being an 8-inch LCD display. That's right, not an OLED, and that has caused quite a bit of conversation online because it feels like we're going backwards in terms of screen quality, and I would agree going from OLED to LCD is not a move in the correct direction in terms of improving, especially when it comes to colors, some of the deep blacks, other things you get out of an OLED, some of the benefits to it. But in this case, Nintendo, I kind of wonder, is forced to sort of do this, and we can look into maybe some of the numbers and other things outside of just they'll want to do a revision down the line. Let's be real. An OLED is one of the easier ways they were able to differentiate the red box Switch from the Switch OLED. So in this case, Takashi Mochizuki is citing Omdia, which is mostly an analyst firm that looks into all kinds of technologies, supply chain, revenues, trends in the market. So they have an entire subscription base, and you can get a ton of data to see which way the market is trending towards. And in this case, it appears that Nintendo's orders around LCDs would be a doubling in shipments of, as they call it, amusement displays. I guess that's just displays in consumer products for things that would be more recreational or entertainment driven, like a game system. So in that case, sure, we can call it amusement displays. Maybe that'll be the phrase going forward here. But he said it would be supplying LCD panels, and it seems that they would be exiting the R&D stage and more or less working towards, let's get things brought in, let's get the orders done, let's get the manufacturing line going, and probably, I would say, a few months. The belief here now, looking at this, is that Nintendo would be launching the system in 2024, which shouldn't be too surprising to most people, since we've kind of been talking about that for a while. It's like, okay, 2024 feels like the time to get this system out, considering holiday 2024 would be 7.5 years of the current Switch. That's a pretty good generation, I'd say, in terms of length. And remember, the current Switch will still be around for another, I'm going to say, 1.5 to 2 years of at least support from Nintendo, whether that's cross-gen or at times we've seen Nintendo just release games outright for that older system, even with the new system on the market. Now, the reason Nintendo tends to respond to Bloomberg, as an example, is because they do sway sort of the investor and business world. And in that case, if Nintendo sees something and they're like, well, hold on a minute, we're not making more money on, say, the Switch OLED than the red box Switch, as they kind of talked about some of the margins. We do want to refute that because that could affect how investors view our stock, our business, our cash flow, and a new system. While it would benefit Nintendo for that info to get out there, it needs to be timed correctly because Nintendo is still working through their current fiscal year, as they have certain expectations to try to meet different things that they've put out there, guidance for investors, and I am curious about their numbers coming up with the holiday season, as I wonder if the Switch came in a bit soft for what they were expecting, and if that's the case, they certainly do not want this information getting out there before the end of the fiscal year that they are indeed launching a new system later this year, as you would expect Switch system sales to start to slow as soon as that announcement was made. But going back to the LCD itself, I understand why there are people online who are frustrated and annoyed at that, because, man, when you get that OLED screen, it's pretty jarring how different it is for the overall experience, even though you're still playing around with the same resolution. I mean, just the color depth of how vibrant the screen is, it's like next level. It really is night and day difference. But for Nintendo, it was actually pretty expensive for them to do that, and that was something they did end up refuting with Bloomberg in one of their previous reports, and then they followed up on it with investor reports, and that's why I mention, it is good to be up to date on some of this info that Nintendo just freely puts out there, because they have told us that the Switch OLED margin, even though it is $50 more than that red box Switch, is actually lower, and they've shared this in profit margins that they just put out there. Again, hard numbers. And it shows, they technically make more money in terms of percentages with the margin on the red box sale than the Switch OLED sale, despite one being $300 and the other being $350. And I think we can pretty much figure why. Well, the big differentiating factor there, outside of the doubling in terms of the NAND flash, 32 gigs to 64 gigabytes, is that OLED screen. So which one do you think is causing the most difference here in terms of cost? So an 8-inch LCD still kind of shows a bit of an improvement in terms of the overall size of the screen, but if they also manage to make that very similar to what we have with the PlayStation Portal, that people look at the screen and they're fine with it, but if they push it up to 1080p, then I think there will be less of a sting when they announce that it's not OLED. I also do wonder if Nintendo feels that if they could get away with a $500 price on this next system, if OLED would find its way into it. Like, I think the $400 price point they're looking at that as the sweet spot. Yes, inflation and things have affected it anyway, but I feel like in Nintendo's mind, if they go too far with the price, it will be harder to sell the system than if they just put it out, obviously, at $400. Although the Switch Lite, while it doesn't have the same functionality, hasn't really sold up to what I think they were hoping with it. Like, I feel like they looked at that as impulse buy, easy sales, and people still just opted for the more expensive Switch with the functionality of being able to switch. So if you have a PlayStation Portal, take a look at that screen, and if you're fine with that, you'll probably be okay with the new Switch, the Switch 2 coming up, because Nate did tell us about this in his podcast last year. VGC also followed up and backed up his claims, and now we have Bloomberg, who seems to have gone a step further and even confirmed with analysts and firms who are viewing supply chain trends and these other things with orders. So yeah, 8-inch LCD, I think you could pretty much pencil that one in. But the other part, of course, would come down to their release date and timing for this system. So I do very much believe it is coming out later this year. I don't think it's anything in the first half or even Q3. I'm kind of thinking this might be an October, November release, somewhere in there. I feel like it's plausible that it could come out in September, but if that were the case, we'd have to start hearing about this thing like very, very soon. In fact, I would expect it to be in the next Direct if that were the case. No, I think if they put it out at the end of October or like the first half of November, that they would probably start to introduce this device in March. And that would put them right at the end of the fiscal year. And I believe that is a good spot for them, considering they would give up maybe a week of Switch sales in their fiscal report, which would also then get them out in front of things with their investors, because they will have their investors briefing that they'll have to go over when it comes to their entire fiscal year. Although I think that's the first week of May. So the next big report we'll have from Nintendo that'll give us a look at their holiday sales would be February 6th. That's on their investor calendar. I don't think we're going to hear about anything with their next system there, but I also believe we're going to have a Direct maybe a little after that. So, okay, we have this 9 months ending December 31st report, February 6th. Maybe the following week they have a Direct, and then we get into March. It's like the third week or so, and then they put out some kind of teaser trailer for the next system, and then they have an event, the whole deal, to try to introduce it further to us. So there are still a lot of questions around this system outside of how powerful it'll be, the screen, like what are they going to do with the Joy-Cons? If the screen gets larger, the overall form factor for the system will change, and I don't think we're going to be using the same Joy-Cons. natively. Like, they might have backwards compatibility to where it can sync up with it when you launch an older Switch game in it. Let's say if it is most 98% backwards compatible, sure. But you feel like they would have a new control system, a new dock, right? So a lot of questions to me around how this system is going to work out with that 8-inch screen and maybe what other features they pack in there, considering they'd be working to save some money and cut costs on the screen. Do they have an idea as to where they can maybe spend that a bit more effectively? And that's even outside of just the system is more powerful. We're using this cool new chip from NVIDIA and all these fun little features that they pack in with things like DLSS. But let me know what you guys think about all this down below with the new report from Bloomberg, certainly getting the internet talking, going from OLED to LCD, but maybe a jump in resolution, the 1080p, a slightly larger screen. Is that worth the trade-off, or would you rather keep, say, 720p, 7-inch OLED display in handheld mode? Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.